What is honor compared to a woman's love? And what is duty against the feel of a newborn son in your arms, or a brother's smile?
This is probably the most important scene in the entire Game of Thrones. And believe me, that's not something I say lightly. I say that because everything George Martin believes about storytelling lives inside this very scene. The conflict he built his entire story around, an irony hidden inside another one, and even the first hints of one of the biggest revelations in television history. It's all there, working together at once, packed into just 3 minutes of dialogue. If you've ever wondered what Game of Thrones is really about, this is your answer.
Yes, it is.
As always, I'll talk about all of these things in detail, but first, we need some context. At this point in the story, Jon Snow is being torn apart from the inside. Back in King's Landing, his father Ned Stark has been imprisoned. At the same time, his brother Robb is calling the banners and marching off to war. And now Jon, stuck at the wall, bound by vows that suddenly feel heavier than they ever did before, because he wants nothing more than to stand beside his family when it matters the most. So here he is, agonizing over the decision, and in his mind, no one else has ever felt this impossible choice between duty and family. But you see, this is where the first irony comes in, because as we learn 5 seasons later, the family he wants to protect, the identity he feels bound to, is all built on a lie. Ned Stark isn't truly his father. Robb isn't actually his brother. Jon Snow is, in fact, a Targaryen. And what is even more ironic is that while Jon is tearing himself apart over this choice, he's about to hear exactly why he's been lied to, from someone who understands his struggle more deeply than he could ever imagine. Not just anyone, but someone who, as it turns out, is part of his real family.
You're Aemon Targaryen.
You see, even now, this irony alone would be enough to carry the entire scene, but the real genius of it hasn't even started yet. Because when you really listen to Maester Aemon, you realize that each word maps onto a face, a choice we won't fully understand until years later, when the real weight of what he's saying finally clicks into place.
If the day should ever come when your Lord Father was forced to choose between honor on the one hand and those he loves on the other, what would he do?
He would do whatever was right.
And here it is. This is probably the biggest piece of foreshadowing of them all, the one that quietly ties the entire scene together. In fact, without even knowing it, Maester Aemon is describing something that already happened twice. And once you see what those two moments are, this question becomes even more fascinating. First, we need to understand what Aemon is actually doing here, because his whole purpose in this moment is to make a point through Ned Stark. I mean, just think about what Aemon knows, what everyone believes back in Season 1. Ned Stark is one of the most honorable men in all of Westeros, and yet he fathered a bastard during the rebellion. From Aemon's perspective, even the honorable Ned Stark couldn't choose honor when it mattered. He held a newborn son in his arms, and love won. And now, standing right there in front of him is Jon Snow, the living, breathing proof of that choice. And then there's Jon's reaction, that little hesitation on his face. It's subtle, but it says a lot. He understands what Aemon is getting at, but he can't bring himself to say his father chose honor, because saying that would contradict his very existence. In his mind, his father broke his vows, fathered a bastard, and lived with that stain. That's not honorable, and that's exactly why he reaches for a different word, a bigger word, a word that doesn't make his existence feel like a stain.
Do whatever was right, no matter what.
But this is where the story quietly turns in on itself, because they're both actually right. Because as we learn later, on the day Jon was born, Ned chose the love of his dying sister. For all his reputation, against all the condemnation from the realm and even from his own wife, he put aside his honor to do what was right, to protect his family. And here's the thing, Ned does it again. Right before his death, he confesses to a crime he didn't commit. Once again, he destroys his honor to protect loved ones. Because once again, honor isn't the point, doing the right thing is.
I am Eddard Stark. I come before you to confess my treason.
But of course, the genius of this scene doesn't stop there. Up until now, everything Maester Aemon said has been about one man, one choice. But now he starts talking about everyone. And when he does, he lays out exactly why this is the most important scene in the story.
Then Lord Stark is one man in 10,000. What is honor compared to a woman's love? And what is duty against the feel of a newborn son in your arms, or a brother's smile?
I mean, wow. Just wow. If there's one line in the entire show that haunts me, it's easily this one. Maester Aemon frames it as a rhetorical question, but the way George Martin wrote it, it's not really a question at all. It's an answer hiding in plain sight. And if you look closely at what's buried inside these words, you'll find Rhaegar. You'll find Robb, Jon, Jaime, and even Maester Aemon himself. First, think about Rhaegar. He loved Lyanna, and for that love, he abandoned his wife, forsook his duty, and in the end, it brought down his entire dynasty. And then Robb. Robb loved Talisa, and it cost him the Freys, the war, and eventually his life. And then Jaime. Jaime loved Cersei. For her, he became every terrible thing people already believed he was. And then Jon. The moment he fell for Ygritte, his vows didn't stand a chance. In their minds, they all did what they did for the same reason: love. And that's exactly what Maester Aemon is telling us here, all the way back in Season 1. The only thing that will ever truly matter in this story, the human heart in conflict with itself. And then there's the image Aemon saves for last, a brother's smile. On the surface, it lands exactly where you'd expect, right on Jon. After all, the entire conflict of this scene is Jon's desperation to ride south and fight beside Robb. But for Aemon, there's something far more personal underneath. As we learn later in the story, Aemon had a brother too, a little boy he once called Egg, the same boy we meet years later in another story. And just like every other man in this scene, Aemon once had a choice to make. But here's where the irony cuts like a knife. Because unlike the others, Aemon chose duty, and he never saw his brother again. But look at him when he says those words. A blind man, staring at nothing, and yet smiles as if that smile is right there in front of him. And 4 seasons later, on his deathbed, the last word Aemon will ever speak is Egg. One last time, he will remember that smile.
Egg, Mother's looking for you. Egg.
But that's still 4 seasons away. Right now, Aemon is still here, standing across from a boy who thinks no one could ever understand what he's going through. And it's from that place, from 60 years of carrying what that choice cost him, he distills everything into one simple truth.
We're all human. We all do our duty when there's no cost to it. Honor comes easy then. Yet, sooner or later, in every man's life, there comes a day when it is not easy. A day when he must choose.
I mean, seriously, how many unforgettable lines can a single scene carry? This one should be quoted by philosophers who lived hundreds of years ago. But instead, it comes from a fictional character on a TV show about battles and dragons. And here's what makes George Martin a true genius. This line isn't here for the sake of being a good quote, it's still doing work. While it captures something deeply human, it's also quietly guiding us to understand everything that happens in the story. Because every single tragedy in this story begins with a choice. Rhaegar chooses Lyanna, Ned protects Jon, Stannis sacrifices Shireen, and many more. But maybe the most fitting of all, Jaime kills the Mad King.
You served him well. When serving was safe.
I mean, just listen to that line. Ned Stark, as someone who knows about impossible choices better than almost anyone, looks Jaime in the eye and says almost the same thing Maester Aemon just described, but he means it as an insult. Because to Ned, Jaime never faced an impossible choice at all. He took the easy way out. But here's maybe the 100th irony of this scene. Ned was wrong. Because as we learn 2 seasons later, Jaime killed the Mad King to save innocent lives. That day, Aemon talks about, came for Jaime too, and Jaime made his choice. And ironically enough, he did exactly what Ned Stark once did. He broke his vows, sacrificed his honor and reputation, all to do what was right. And here we are, listening to Aemon, but remembering this. Neither of them will ever know they're reflections of the same truth Aemon is trying to explain. Sooner or later, there comes a day when that choice isn't easy. And Jaime's day came in that throne room, Ned's day came in that tower. And in the end, they both paid the same price. But of course, Jon can't see any of this. Not the irony sitting right in front of him, not even the deeper meaning behind Aemon's words. And honestly, how could he? Because from where he stands, everything feels simple and everything hurts.
You do not know. No one knows. I may be a bastard, but he is my father and Robb is my brother.
No, Jon, you do not know. You know nothing. They are not. And Aemon's response actually tells you that. I mean, just look at the way he laughs. It's almost like he's mocking Jon for believing those words. In fact, even Maester Aemon himself doesn't understand why that laugh is so perfect. But George Martin does. This is George Martin laughing at us, because he knows that one day, everything Jon just said will turn completely upside down, and this scene will change its meaning entirely.
His name is Aemon Targaryen.
As the scene ends, Aemon does something he's been building toward this entire scene. He turns the mirror on himself. Just as I said at the beginning of this video, every word he said, every question he's asked, it all comes from a place Jon can't even imagine yet. And when he finally opens that door he's kept shut for years, we get to see that choice and what it actually means.
The gods were cruel when they saw fit to test my vows. And what could I do when the ravens brought the news from the south? The death of my family. I was helpless, blind, frail. But when I heard they had killed my brother's son, and his poor son, and the children, even the little children.
I know you feel the same, just goosebumps. Because Peter Vaughn's delivery makes every word land like a hammer. That low growl in his voice, the rage flickering behind his eyes. He's blind, he's frail, and yet you can still see the dragon. The massacre he talks about happened almost 20 years ago, and yet here's this calm old man visibly seething. That alone tells you everything about the choice he made. Just like he said, we are all human. He took his oath, left behind his family, but he still feels not just the helplessness of watching his family burn from afar, but the knowledge that if he hadn't abdicated, he might have prevented all of it. And here's what makes it even more devastating. In the books, Aemon says he was tested 3 times. And if you really think about it, this is far more brutal because it means throughout his entire life, Aemon was tested again and again. Each time he made a choice, and each time it cost him something he didn't get back.
I will not tell you to stay or go. You must make that choice yourself and live with it for the rest of your days, as I have.
At the end of the scene, Maester Aemon delivers his final words and walks out, leaving Jon in silence. This is the final lesson for him, and it is even more brutal. Because after everything Aemon has said, he can't offer him a way out. Instead, he simply tells him the truth. There is only the choice and the weight you'll carry for the rest of your life. Only then, we come to realize that every major decision Jon makes for the rest of the story will be a reflection of this conversation. Each time the choice gets harder, each time it costs more, and each time Jon pays, just as Aemon has. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a comment, give a like, and click to subscribe. Your support will greatly help the mysterious algorithm notice me. And if you want to support me directly, you can join the channel by clicking the join button. See you next time.